Good morning. I'm Reverend Tega Swan, and I welcome you to today's episode of God's Grace for Single Mothers. We still have a minute, but while we're waiting, I would like to introduce you to today's topic. Today's topic is the problem of single parenting. The problem of single parenting. That's what we're going to be talking about today because oftentimes we have heard about single parenting um, always with negative connotations. And it's such, that term, single parenting, is such a blight that women will choose anything but to be single mothers. And also, in my own experience, the way single mothers have often been treated and responded to, it's almost as if they have the plague. So when you hear single parenting, is all this terrifying thing for us as women to encounter, is something terrible for our own children to be brought into. So what is it that makes single parenting such a terrifying thing? You know, as I stepped into the life of single parenting, it wasn't so clear what the issue was, other than the repeated fact that there was not a man, there was not a father. This is the reason that has often been used to depict single parents, single moms, and their children. And when you hear people talk about single parent families, the way they describe the children, they're going to say, all these children without fathers in their lives. The kid turned out a bad kid because he has no father in his life. And so when you think about all these things, it begins to appear that the presence of a man or a father is some kind of magic that helps children turn out right. All of this I found out in my 14-year period, but also found out really quickly that that's not the case, because I began to observe my own little single parent family and two parent families, and how their kids were raised and how some of their kids acted and what they did. And it began to be clear that the presence of a man or the presence of a father is not an automatic guarantee of raising successful children. So, yet at the same time, there are real issues. There is something that's happening that makes single parent families vulnerable to these dangers out there. The kids who are not finishing school, the kids who are on drugs, the kids who are get teenage pregnancies, the kids ending up in jail. So something is contributing to all of this, and that's what we're going to be talking today. If you're joining me for the first time, I want to say welcome again to God's Grace for Single Parents, and we're talking about the problem with single parenting. So after my own experience in studying, one of the things I found out was really clear that the issue with single parenting is not the absence of a father, is not the absence of a man, because there are single parents who have raised successful children. In subsequent series, I will share some of those success tips with you, but for today, I don't focus on what makes single parenting a problem. The truth is that single parenting is not a one-person job. God never ordained it to be a one-person job. Single parenting parenting on its own is demanding. Those of you who are two-parent families, I want you to stop for a moment and think about what it took for the two of you to care for your little baby, tiny little baby. How it drained your resources of finances, of time, emotions. Now, Take that back and put it all on one person, and you will begin to see where the problem of single parenting comes in. So here is a two-person job that is hardly doable by two people alone. That's why we need communities to help raise children. That's why we talk about it being needing a village to raise a child, where everybody has to come in to do one thing or the other for that child, so that the child is receiving what he or she needs, and the people giving those things are not tasked and exhausted and depleted. But what happens with single parenting is that whether it be the resources of time, whether it be the resources of money, whether it be the resources of emotion, single moms are tasked to the maximum. They have to give all they have and then some. And if it takes two people to give that to children, and it's barely enough, can you imagine what it is when one person is doing that? Now, the last calculation, which I did for about 7 years ago, was how much it took to raise one child. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars to raise one single child. Now, I want to ask you, how many of you living in the United States, one person alone, how much do you earn a year? Now, take how much you earn a year, deduct all your natural expenses of shelter, utilities, transportation, and to what you do for your children to keep them in a home, all that stuff, and tell me if you're able to come up with those hundreds of thousands of dollars that's required to raise your child. Don't talk about the time. How can one parent be at work, be at school, be at the children's games? Single parent children, yes, they are walking the street, but they're not walking the streets because their parents don't care. They're walking the streets because they need some form of recreation, and probably the parents can drop their job and run to take their children to those recreation places. So we have all these issues that make it difficult for one person. You cannot, as one person, attempt to give to any one child what it takes two parents and then some to give in. But because society has so placed single parents into this place where they are seen as a blight, a plague, some contaminable disease, something that is not desirable for their society, not by helping to take it out, but by helping to marginalize and ostracize and denigrate it, we often don't see what these single parents really need, and instead what we heap up on them are the symptoms of their need. Their symptoms are saying to us, we need help. I need somebody to step in. I need somebody from my church who will say, hey, I notice you work from 8 to 5, and I notice sometimes I see your child on the street. I take my own child to this program. Is it okay if I take your child along? We need people from communities and churches who will step up to do that. We need people who will say, I know you are a single parent, and I can't imagine how much you earn and what it will take for you to put a roof over your head and sleep well at night with you and your children. Is there any bill I can help you with? We need people who will do that. We need people who will check on a single parent, just say, how are you doing today? You need a timeout? Can I watch the kids so you have some rest? Go do some recreation of your own. Just hang out with your girls, and if you don't want, just read a book. We need people who will do that. Well, having said all that, I want to contrast something, because this is called God's grace for single mothers. So what does God have to say about the situation of single parents and their children? Is there a part in God's plan for single mothers and their children? Society has tended to describe children of single parent home as fatherless children. This is a wrong description. But hey, for the purposes of this program, we're going to take it like that. Yeah, they say the fathers are not there. They call the children fatherless. That's all right. And they make it seem because they are fatherless, they're some kind of scum. Let's see what the Bible says about that. In Psalm 27 verse 10, the psalmist says, "Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me." Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me. What does this mean? In explaining that, I want to go a little bit further to jump to what Jesus taught us in Luke 11, when he taught his disciples and us to pray the Lord's Prayer. The very first thing he said there was, "Our Father." Our Father, not the father of children from two-parent families, but our Father, that anyone who would come to God has inherited a father. And in that Luke 11, he goes to talk a whole lot about the fatherhood of God and how it is better than the fatherhood of man. In calling God Father, we are taught that God has no hierarchy for children. There's no demeaning to say, oh, one is better because they come from two-parent families and one is less, because God is loving each equally. They are all children of God. As a matter of fact, I love this parable from the Black community. I never heard it until I lived among the Blacks. And it said this: God has no grandchildren. We are all children of God. So there will be no preferential treatment, and his abundance will be open to all of us. And to end this today, I want to say to you single mothers, be encouraged. Because if God has stepped out to be the father of your children and he distributes equally to all his creation, then you and your children stand in line for God's provision, for God's love, for God's care equally, and he will not discriminate to bless your children the way he blesses the children of the two-parent families. He will bless you equally. Open your hands, open your hearts, and expect what God has for you. And I'm going to close with Romans 8, where it says to us, if God be for us, who can be against us? God, who has given us everything, his best in Jesus Christ, will he withhold from you, single moms and your families, what you need for success, for prosperity, for your successful existence? No, he will not. So hold on to that until next week when I come back again with another episode of God's Grace for Single Mothers. Next week, our topic will be single moms. Do you need a hero? Thank you for tuning in today. God bless you.